Welcome, dear listener tonight. I invite you to set down the weight of the day. Let your worries, your stress, and the noise of the outside world slowly fade into the background. You are safe here. You are held in a space of comfort and peace. This is a collection of 25 emotional bedtime story essential tales that may bring a tear to your eyes, but also a healing warmth to your heart. They are stories of love, of loss, of kindness, of forgiveness, and of the quiet beauty that hides in everyday life. Each story is a soft whisper meant to touch your soul, to remind you that even in sadness there is light, even in endings there is renewal, and even in tears there is healing. As you listen, allow yourself to feel deeply, to release gently, and to sink into the calming rhythm of the words. These stories are not only for your mind, but for your spirit. They are written to comfort you, to heal what aches within you, and to guide you toward a night of peaceful, restorative sleep. So take a deep breath. Let go of everything that burdens you. Lay back, close your eyes, and let these stories carry you like a soft lullaby in tow. A space of calm, healing, and dreams. You are not alone. You are safe. And tonight you are free to rest. Story 1. The Lantern by the Lake. In a quiet lakeside town, there was an old man who carried a lantern each evening. His wife had passed many years ago, and the lantern was her gift to him. Every night he would light it, set it by the lake, and watch the reflection dance on the water. Locals often wondered why he did this ritual. Night after night, even when the seasons changed. Some thought it was grief, others thought it was habit. But one evening, he shared his secret with a young boy who asked him about it. The old man smiled softly and said, "When she left this world, I thought I had lost her forever. But when I light this lantern, I feel her near. Love doesn't disappear, it changes form. It becomes light, guiding us in ways we don't see." The boy carried those words with him forever, and the villagers noticed that sometimes when the lantern flickered in the wind, two shadows danced instead of one. It was as though love itself had never left. Story 2. The Little Garden Inn. The middle of a bustling city lived a woman who always felt invisible. Each day at work, she blended into the crowd, her words unheard, her efforts unnoticed. She carried a quiet sadness. One day, passing by a small shop, she bought a packet of wildflower seeds. She didn't know why she didn't even have a garden. But back at her tiny apartment, she planted them in a few pots near her window. Weeks passed and flowers grew. Bright yellows, deep purples, soft blues. Every morning she watered them, whispering little words of encouragement. Slowly, her apartment filled with colored one evening. As she sat by the window with her flowers, she realized something. She wasn't invisible at all. These flowers bloomed because of her care. They noticed her. They reflected her love. Sometimes. Healing doesn't come from people, it comes from giving life to something that needs you. And through that, we see our worth. Story 3, The Bridge of Letters, A father and son had a falling out many years ago. Angry words were exchanged, and silence built a wall between them. Time passed, and neither reached out. Pride stood taller than love. But the father, late at night, began writing letters to his son. Letters of apology, letters of memory, letters filled with the words he could never say aloud. He never sent them, he just kept them in a small wooden box under his bed. Years later, when the father passed away, the son returned for the funeral. While sorting his belongings, he found the box. Inside were dozens of letters, each one addressed to him. Tears fell as he read them one by one. He realized that his father had never stopped loving him. The words he longed to hear were always, "They're just waiting." He took those letters to a bridge where they once walked together and let them scatter into the river below. As the pages floated away, so did his pain. Forgiveness finally found its way home. Story 4, The Empty Chair There was a small cafe by the corner of a street, known for its warm bread and soft music. In the corner of the cafe sat a woman who always kept one chair empty at her table. She ordered 2 cups of tea, one for herself, one for the chair. Curious, a waiter once asked her why she did this. She smiled and said, "This chair is for my daughter. She passed before her time, but I like to believe she still sits with me here. I don't want her to feel forgotten." Years passed and other people who had lost someone began to come. They too left empty chairs at their tables. The cafe became a quiet place of remembrance, where grief was softened by shared silence and warm tea. Asterisk sometimes. Healing is not about moving on, it's about making space for love that still lingers, even in empty chairs. Story 5. The Tree That Listened. Asterisk. In a small village, there was a giant oak tree where people often went to think. Legend said the tree could listen. If you spoke your worries to it, the tree would hold them, and your heart would feel lighter. Asterisk. One young woman who suffered from anxiety visited the tree often. She poured her fears into its roots, whispering all the thoughts that kept her awake at night. She felt silly at first, but soon realized something. Every time she spoke to the tree, she left feeling calmer. Asterisk. One day, she brought her little brother to the tree. He asked her why she talked to it. She said, "Because when I let the tree carry my worries, I don't have to carry them alone." Asterisk. Years later, the young woman grew old, but the oak tree still stood strong. Generations continued to visit, sharing their troubles, finding peace in its silent strength. Asterisk. And perhaps the true wisdom was this: healing doesn't always require answers. Sometimes it only requires a place to lay your burdens down. Story 6, The Forgotten Song, asterisk. There once was a piano in an old church that no one played anymore. Dust covered its keys, and its sound had been forgotten. But one winter evening, a young boy sneaked inside the church. He sat at the piano, curious, and pressed a single key. Asterisk, the sound was broken and shaky, but something about it moved him. He returned every night, teaching himself to play. Slowly, the music grew stronger. The townspeople began to gather outside, listening to the soft melodies that floated through the night air. Asterisk, one elderly woman, with tears in her eyes, whispered, "That's the song my husband played for me before he passed." Others too remembered pieces of themselves in the notes. The piano that had been silent for years found its voice again. In doing so, it awakened memories in those who thought they had lost them forever. Asterisk. Sometimes healing comes when we touch what was abandoned and give it life again. Story 7, The Last Train Home, asterisk. A man who had lived far away from his family for years decided to take the train back to his childhood town. The journey was long, but as he sat by the window, watching the changing landscapes, memories began to flow back. Asterisk. He remembered his father waiting at the station, his mother cooking meals, his siblings laughing in the yard. Tears filled his eyes as he realized how much time he had lost. Asterisk. When the train finally arrived, the station looked quiet, almost too quiet. His parents were gone, his siblings had moved away, but as he stepped onto the platform, a small boy ran up to him. It was his nephew. The boy handed him a letter that read, asterisk, "Even if we are not here, you are never late to come home. Love waits in every memory you keep alive." Asterisk, the man cried, not out of sorrow, but out of relief. The last train home had not brought him to people, it had brought him back to love. Story 8, The Old Violin Maker, asterisk. In a cobblestone town lived a man who made violins by hand. His wife had passed away, and he worked in silence. Each violin he carved carried her initials hidden inside the wood. Asterisk, when people played his violins, they always said the sound carried an unusual warmth, as if the music itself held love. One day, a young girl bought one of his violins. When she played it in the town square, people stopped, stunned by the emotions it carried. Asterisk, the violin maker, listening from his window, wept. His wife's memory had not disappeared. It had traveled into the world through music, touching hearts of strangers he would never meet. Asterisk love, he realized, was never confined. It spread like sound, endless and free. Story 9. The Paper. Crane's asterisk. A young woman had been diagnosed with an illness that frightened her deeply. To calm herself, she began folding paper cranes every night before bed. She whispered her worries into them and set them by her window. Asterisk, at first, it was just a way to cope. But soon, the cranes filled her room. One day, her neighbor noticed and asked about them. She explained, embarrassed. But the neighbor smiled and began folding cranes with her. Soon, others in the building joined 2. Asterisk by the end of the year. Her room was filled with thousands of colorful cranes, each one carrying a prayer, a hope, or a tear from someone who cared for her. Asterisk, she looked around and realized something. She wasn't fighting alone. The cranes had become a reminder that even in fear, love multiplies when shared. Story 10. The Keeper of Stars asterisk. On the edge of a desert village lived a blind man who was known as the Keeper of Stars. Each night he would sit outside, with children gathered around him, telling them where the stars were in the sky. Asterisk. Even though I cannot see them, he said, I remember them from when I could, and now they live in my heart. Asterisk, the children would look up and confirm his descriptions. He was always right. His knowledge of the stars never faded, even in darkness. Asterisk, one evening, a child asked him, don't you miss seeing them with your eyes? Asterisk, the man smiled. At first, yes. But then I learned something. The stars don't only belong to the eyes. They belong to the soul, and no darkness can take them from me. Asterisk, the children grew up carrying that lesson, even when life takes something away, it leaves behind a deeper way of seeing. There was once an old man who lived at the edge of a busy marketplace. While others sold food, clothes, and jewelry, he sold only lanterns. His lanterns weren't fancy, but each one carried a quiet glow that lasted longer than others. One evening, a young girl asked him, "Why do your lanterns shine so gently?" The man smiled, "Because I make them for people's hearts, not for their houses. Each one carries a prayer." He told her how he whispered a blessing into every lantern before lighting it. Some lanterns carried comfort, some carried forgiveness, and some carried courage. Years later, the girl returned as a grown woman. She had gone through losses and heartbreak, but she still kept the lantern he gave her as a child. I lit it. Every night I felt alone, she told him with tears in her eyes. It reminded me I was never completely in darkness. The lantern maker smiled gently. That's because love, once lit, keeps burning. Story 12. The River of Letters. There was a tradition in one small town where people wrote letters to those they missed and placed them into the river. The current carried them away, as if delivering them to the hearts of the departed. One boy, missing his grandmother, wrote letters every week. He told her about school, about how he was learning to cook, and about how he still remembered her. Lullabies. Years later, as an adult, he stopped writing. But one evening, when he was feeling lost, he returned to the river. There, he found an old woman sitting by the water, reading a letter aloud. She explained, "I never receive answers, but I always feel heard. The river listens." The boy, now a man, realized something. It wasn't about receiving words back. It was about releasing what weighed heavy inside. By letting the river carry his words, he had been healing himself all along. Sometimes the act of speaking love, whether heard or not, creates peace. Story 13. The Empty Chair. In a small cafe, there was always one empty chair near the window. The owner refused to remove it. People often asked, "Why keep a chair no one sits in?" The owner would only smile and say, "Because someone might still come." That chair had once belonged to his best friend, who passed away years ago. Every morning, he placed a cup of coffee in front of it, not because he expected his friend to return, But because love remained, over the years, strangers began sitting in that chair, unaware of its story. And whenever they did, the cafe owner treated them with extra kindness, as if they were carrying a piece of his friend's spirit. The chair that began as a memory of grief became a symbol of welcome for all. Sometimes, keeping space for love, even when it feels empty, makes room for new connections to grow. Story 14. The Willow Tree's Secret Asterisk. At the edge of a meadow stood a willow tree where children once played. A girl often sat beneath it, whispering her secrets into its bark. She believed the tree listened. When she grew older and moved away, the willow remained. Years later, weary from life, she returned to that meadow. She sat beneath the tree again and wept. To her surprise, carved into the bark were faint words. She had written as a child, "I promise to always come back when I'm sad." She touched those words with trembling hands. It felt as though her younger self had left her a message across time, reminding her that healing was possible. The willow had held her secrets safely for decades. In its quiet way, it gave her back the strength she thought she had lost. Story 15. The Lighthouse Keeper. On a stormy coast lived a lighthouse keeper who had no family. His job was to keep the light shining every night, guiding ships away from danger. One night, a sailor who had nearly crashed onto the rocks came to thank him. "You saved my life," the sailor said. The keeper shook his head. "I didn't save you. The light did." But when the sailor left, the keeper stood quietly, looking at the glowing beam. He realized something. Though he lived alone, the light he tended touched countless lives he would never see. From then on, he no longer felt lonely. For every ship guided, every life protected, he understood connection doesn't always require presence. Sometimes simply shining is enough. Story 16. The old violin asterisk in a quiet pawn shop. An old violin rested on the shelf. Its strings were dusty and no one seemed interested in it. Most customers passed by without even noticing. Asterisk. But one day, a young man entered the shop. He had little money, but when he saw the violin, his eyes lit up. He held it carefully as if it were fragile glass. Asterisk. This one doesn't play well anymore. The shopkeeper warned. Asterisk. The young man smiled. Then I'll play gently. Asterisk. That night, he took the violin home and began tuning it. The sound wasn't perfect, but it carried a strange warmth. As he played, tears filled his eyes. He remembered his grandmother who had once told him, "Every broken thing still carries music." Asterisk. Over the years, he never replaced the violin. It became his companion, its imperfect notes carrying perfect memories. Asterisk. The violin may have been old, but in its cracks lived stories, and in its songs lived healing. Story 17. The Paper Cranes. Asterisk A. Little boy once learned from his mother that folding 1,000 paper cranes could grant a wish. So when she fell ill, he began folding. Asterisk. Day after day. He made cranes from scraps of paper newspaper, old homework, even grocery receipts. His fingers grew tired, but he kept folding, whispering, "Please get better." Asterisk. Though his mother eventually passed away, he finished all 1,000. He hung them above his window where the breeze made them dance. Asterisk. Years later, when he was grown and had children of his own, those cranes still hung there, faded but intact. His daughter asked him, "Did your wish come true?" Asterisk. He looked at the delicate birds swaying softly. "Yes," he whispered, "because even though she's gone, love stayed." Asterisk. The cranes had not healed her body, but they had healed his heart. Story 18. The train that waited. Asterisk. In a small town, a train stopped every evening. Most passengers came and went quickly, but one conductor had a habit. He always waited a few extra minutes before departing. Asterisk. Why do you wait? Someone asked. Asterisk. He answered simply, because someone might still be running. Asterisk. For years he waited. Sometimes no one came, but other times a rushing figure appeared at the last moment. An old man with groceries, a tired mother with her child, a student running late. Each time they were saved because the train had waited. Asterisk when the conductor grew old and retired. People remembered him not for being on time, but for the minutes he gave. Asterisk. Those small moments of kindness carried lives safely forward, proving that compassion often lives in the simplest pauses. Story 19. The Clockmaker's Gift. Asterisk. There was once a clockmaker who repaired watches and clocks in his tiny workshop. He believed that every broken clock carried a story. Asterisk. One day, a woman brought in a pocket watch. It belonged to her late husband, and it had stopped ticking. She asked if he could fix it. Asterisk. The clockmaker carefully opened it and worked for hours. Finally, it ticked again. Asterisk. When he handed it back, the woman pressed it to her chest and wept. It feels like he's near again, she whispered. Asterisk. The clockmaker said gently, time never truly stops. It only rests, waiting for us to remember. Asterisk. Years later, when the clockmaker passed away, people in town remembered him not just for fixing timepieces, but for mending hearts. Story 20. The Letter Never Sent. Asterisk. A young woman once wrote a long letter to her father, telling him all the things she never said while he was alive. Her gratitude, her regrets, her love. But she never sent it. He had already passed away. Asterisk. For years she kept the letter folded inside a book. Every time she opened it, she cried. Asterisk. One evening, sitting by a fire, she finally burned it. As the paper turned to ash, she whispered, I hope you hear me now. Asterisk. The flames carried her words into the night sky, and though silence answered, her heart felt lighter. Asterisk. Sometimes healing doesn't come from being heard. It comes from finally speaking, even if only to the stars. Story 21. The empty swing asterisk. In a small park, there was an old swing that nobody used anymore. Rust had crept across its chains, and the wooden seat had faded. Children ran past it, choosing brighter playgrounds. But every evening, an old man came and sat on the swing. He never swung high. He just let it move slowly back and forth. One day, a curious child asked, "Why do you sit here?" "No one plays on this swing." The man smiled softly. "This was my daughter's favorite swing. She used to laugh here every afternoon. When she grew up, she moved far away, and then one day she was gone." The child looked at him with wide eyes. "Doesn't it make you sad?" The man shook his head gently. "No, because when the wind moves the swing, I can still hear her laughter." And as the swing creaked in the breeze, the child thought they heard it too. Story 22. The Lantern Festival. Once a year, a town held a lantern festival. Families wrote wishes or messages to their loved ones and let glowing lanterns float into the night sky. One woman stood apart, holding a lantern close. On it, she had written just 3 words: "I forgive you." Her father had left the family when she was young, and she had carried that wound for decades. But tonight, she was ready to let go. When she released the lantern, it drifted higher and higher, glowing warmly. As it disappeared into the stars, she whispered, "Be free, so I can be free too." And for the first time in years, her chest felt light, as if forgiveness was a lantern of its own, lifting her upward. Story 23. The Teacher's Notebook. A retired teacher spent his last days cleaning his old house. In the attic, he found a box filled with notebooks from his teaching years. He opened one, filled with essays from students. On the last page, he found a letter tucked inside. Dear teacher, you may not remember me, but you saved me. You told me once, you matter. I believed you. That belief carried me through dark times. If you're reading this someday, please know you changed a life. The teacher sat quietly, tears falling on the page. He had never known the impact of his words. Sometimes the smallest kindness plants seeds we never see grow, but they bloom all the same. Story 24. The Hospital Window. A boy lay in a hospital bed, too weak to walk. His only joy was the window beside him, where he could watch the world outside the trees, the clouds, the changing sky. Asterisk, one day, his bed was moved away from the window and another patient was placed there. The boy grew sad, thinking he would never see the view again. Asterisk, but then the new patient leaned toward the window and began describing everything he saw. The sun is setting now. The sky looks like painted fire. And the children are playing with kites. Asterisk, every day he described the scene outside, painting pictures with words. Asterisk, when the boy finally recovered enough to walk, he rushed to the window himself. To his shock, outside was just a blank brick wall. Asterisk, he asked the nurse. Why did he describe the view? Asterisk, the nurse smiled gently. Because he wanted to give you something beautiful to hold on to. Asterisk, and the boy understood that sometimes healing comes not from what we see, but from what others help us imagine. Story 25, The Final Goodbye. Asterisk. There was a woman who had never been good at saying goodbye. She always avoided funerals, farewells, even endings of books or movies. Asterisk, when her mother passed away, she felt lost. She sat in the garden where they used to drink tea together and whispered, I don't know how to let go. Asterisk, a breeze moved through the garden, rustling the flowers her mother once planted. In that sound, she felt her mother's presence, gentle and kind. Asterisk. She realized then that goodbyes were not endings. They were beginnings of memory. Her mother was not gone. She was woven into every flower, every breeze, every smile she carried. Forward. Asterisk, that night, for the first time in many weeks, the woman slept peacefully. She understood that love never needs goodbye, it simply changes form.